Shalom, I'm Nama Rue. This is my husband, Rabbi David Rue. So this is actually the third time we are going to record a video where we discuss Jewish women's fertility and spiritual opening of God remembering the woman and granting her children because of a blessing. Can you bring us to the next story?
Telling stories that way is always hard.
Well, okay.
It's always easiest when I'm to use stories to illustrate things. But I think I have exactly one more story that I can do without being in the middle of a conversation, triggering my memory of different stories. Yehuda Cook, who was the Rosh HaShanah of Merkaz Arav after Rav Harlap, was once giving a shir in a kollel in Tel Aviv, and he mentioned to the Rosh Kollel that one of the Avrechim, one of the students in the kollel, a kollel is a yeshiva, so to speak, for married people, looked sad. He didn't, understand it, wanted to know why. And the Rosh Kollel said, actually, you were the one that performed his marriage almost 10 years ago, and they haven't been able to have any children. And Yehuda said, it's impossible that I did a wedding and that they won't have children. And he sends someone to bring this young man over, and he gives him a bracha that his wife will have a son within the year. And she does. And they're very happy. And after she weans the son in 2 years, as what the Gemara says is supposed to be done, she tells her husband that she wants a daughter. And he should travel to Yerushalayim. This is in the 50s. It wasn't so easy to travel in those days, not like today. He should go to Yerushalayim and ask her Yehuda for a bracha for a daughter. So he goes to Yerushalayim, goes to Yehuda's house, and he says that his wife wants a daughter as well. So Yehuda thinks, and he says, all right, you will also have a daughter. They have a daughter. After the daughter is weaned, his wife says, I'd really like another child. Go back to Yerushalayim. So he travels to Yerushalayim. He walks in the room with Yehuda. Yehuda goes, no, this is it. That's enough.
Wow.
There are apparently limits to the level of brachot. And certain people are capable of seeing what those limits are. Elihavu, in addition to his esrog, was also famous for his brachot. And there's a story that his wife met a woman in the shuk, and she could tell there was a problem. His Rabbanit was a very special woman as well, and she talked to the woman, and she hadn't been able to have children after a long time of marriage, and she said, come home with me. And when she gets home, she gets involved in a telephone call that's very important. And Rav Eliyahu walks through the salon, going from his office to the kitchen, and he sees the woman. He asks what she's doing there, and this, that, and he gives her a bracha that she should have a child soon. And when he's walking back from getting his coffee in the kitchen or tea or whatever it was, his wife the Rabbanit is now off the phone, and tells her husband that this woman needs a bracha for a child. Since his wife told him that, so of course he gives her another bracha for a child, and she gave birth to twins. There was one other story that I heard recently on Rav Eliyahu's yahrzeit from Rav Shmuel Eliyahu, his son, who's the Rav Tzas, that when his father was in intensive care, unconscious, someone who was childless in Tzvaz came to him and said, is it possible that you can ask your father for a bracha that my wife should have a child? He says, my father's unconscious, And he's pressed. And anyway, if the tzaddik could hear, even though he's unconscious, he would hear, and he would. So he's pressed. So he's going to Yerushalayim, every few days to see his father as it is. So he goes and he mentions it. A few weeks later, the person comes to him and asks him. He's like, "I did it." He said, "Well, next time you go, can you do it again?" And then there's a few weeks, sometime later. So yeah, it's pressed. Shmuel is pressed. So he says, "Fine." And he does it again. When his father recovers consciousness, the person says, "Now that he's conscious, can you ask your father for a bracha?" He says, "All right." He asks his father. His father gives a bracha with some indication that he's already done this before. And this time, the woman delivers triplets.
What?
3 brachot, 3 children.
So this is the son who is currently the chief rabbi of Svat,
Yes.
who is telling you about his father giving blessings for women to have children while he is unconscious in intensive care. And
that is the way Shmuel told the story, yes.
Thank you. There was something you mentioned in the earlier story about, it says to wean a child after 2 years. Can you go into that a little bit?
The Gemara feels the appropriate time for a child to be weaned is when they're 2 years old. That's it. That's all there is. There's nothing more to say.
Like Shmuel was weaned when he was 3? No?
I have no idea. I would have to look at it.
It's right in the Tanakh.
That may be. I don't know anything about Tanakh.
We'll have to check on that. Right. Do we know anything more, like what it says about breastfeeding?
There was really no other way of feeding a child, so all children were breastfed. Wealthy women employed wet nurses. There is significant discussion about the wealthier families used wet nurses, and so when a woman marries, she goes up in status but never down in status. So if she marries in her family, feeds themselves, and she marries into a family that uses a wet nurse, her husband has to hire a wet nurse when they have a child, and vice versa. If her family used wet nurses and she marries into a family that was too poor for that, nonetheless, her husband is now obligated to respect the status that she came from and hire a wet nurse for her. A woman always goes up in status when she marries. There's no possibility of her going down in status.
It's interesting because it's a social phenomenon, but like we know medically that like a woman's body, a healthy woman producing breast milk produces exactly what the baby needs. Her breasts get messages from the saliva of the baby's mouth. It's like, I mean, maybe a wet nurse somehow also can respond, but it's not the same.